Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm glad you're here with me once again today. In the last episode, we talked about who you are becoming after survival mode, the identity shifts, the grief, the awakening, and the quiet parts of you asking for more space. Today, we're talking about something every helper struggles with, especially in times of collective stress: boundaries. Not the rigid kind, not the punitive kind, and not the just say no kind, but the kind of boundaries that keep you whole, the kind that allow you to stay connected without disappearing. Right now, many helpers are experiencing what is a boundary crisis, not because they're weak or unskilled, but because the demands on their nervous system have exceeded what their old boundaries are built for. Your previous boundaries were designed for a different season of your life, a different level of demand, a different level of collective intensity. When the world shifts, as it has, your boundaries have to shift with it. So if your boundaries feel wobbly, inconsistent, or harder to maintain, that's not a failure. It's not a moral issue. And it certainly isn't a sign that you're bad at boundaries. What it is, though, is a sign that your system is asking for a new way of being, one that honors your capacity, your humanity, and the reality of the world you're practicing in. Many helpers are asking themselves this same question right now, and it's definitely one that I had to spend some time reflecting on myself. Why do boundaries feel harder right now? Let's name the truth. Boundaries are harder when the world feels unsafe, even if it doesn't look unsafe on the surface. Your nervous system doesn't respond only to what's happening in your personal life. It responds to the tone of the world around you. Even if your day looks normal, your system is still tracking the collective tension in the air, the emotional climate of your community, the rising intensity in the people you support, the constant stream of distressing news. Even if you're actively trying to avoid the news, you still hear it. The uncertainty that never fully resolves. The sense that something is shifting, even if you can't name it. Your body picks up on these cues long before your mind does. It notices the micro signals, the urgency in people's voices, the heaviness in the room, the way everyone seems a little more on edge, and it adjusts accordingly. And it's no surprise that we as helpers are more in tune to this than others. We are trained, and many of us just naturally aligned to be more empathic. So we notice these micro signals at a rate much quicker and at a higher intensity than most other people. We pick up on these cues so much sooner. So even if nothing catastrophic is happening in your immediate environment, your nervous system may still be operating under a quiet, chronic sense of threat. That's why boundaries feel harder right now. When we add all of this to the continued political instability, community fear, increased client acuity, rising emotional intensity, chronic uncertainty, and that sense of collective overwhelm, your nervous system is doing exactly what it was designed to do, shifting into protection mode. But here's the part we don't talk about enough. For helpers, protection mode doesn't look like shutting down. It looks like doing more. When the world feels unpredictable, your system tries to create safety through connection, caretaking, and responsiveness. That's why we as helpers often default to hyper responsibility, overfunctioning, people pleasing, emotional absorption, and crisis mode caretaking. These aren't character flaws. They're adaptive strategies. Strategies that once kept you safe, connected, or valued in your family, your community, or your early training. Here's the key. Your body doesn't update its survival strategies just because your mind learned about boundaries. You can understand boundaries intellectually and still feel your whole system panic at the idea of disappointing someone. Boundaries become harder when you are tired, when you're scared, when you're stretched too thin, when you're trying to be the steady one, when you're carrying more than your share, when you're afraid of letting someone down, and when you're afraid of being perceived as uncaring. But there's another layer. Boundaries feel harder when the stakes feel higher, when clients are in crisis, when communities are hurting, when the world feels unstable. Your nervous system interprets limits as potential threats to connection, and connection has always been tied to safety. So in those moments, your system prioritizes connection over protection because historically, connection meant survival. If your boundaries feel harder right now, it's not because you're failing. It's because your nervous system is doing exactly what it was built to do. Protect you by keeping you connected in times of threat. And that means the work isn't about forcing firmer boundaries or shaming yourself into being better at them. It's about supporting the nervous system that's trying to keep you safe so you can set boundaries from regulation rather than fear. There are 3 types of boundaries every helper needs, and most of us were only taught one. Most helpers were trained in policies and logistics, not in the internal or energetic boundaries that actually keep us well. These 3 layers work together like scaffolding: the external structure, the emotional container, and the energetic filter. Let's start with structural boundaries. These are the external logistical limits, the ones most training programs emphasize because they're visible and easy to measure. Examples include scheduling, caseload limits, communication policies, time off, session length, and availability. Structural boundaries create predictability and safety. They protect your time, your workflow, and your professional role. But on their own, they can't protect your inner capacity. You can have the perfect scheduling and still be emotionally flooded or energetically depleted. Structural boundaries are necessary, but they're not sufficient. Emotional boundaries protect your inner world, your feelings, your sense of responsibility, and your self-concept. They help you stay connected without merging, rescuing, or absorbing. Examples of emotional boundaries include not absorbing client emotions, not taking responsibility for someone else's healing, not personalizing someone's distress, and not carrying sessions home in your body. These boundaries are harder because they require self-awareness, not scheduling. They ask you to notice: when am I over-identifying? When am I rescuing instead of supporting? When am I taking on something that isn't mine? Emotional boundaries allow you to care deeply without collapsing into somebody else's experience. Energetic boundaries protect your nervous system, your life force, your capacity, your internal bandwidth. They're subtle, somatic, and often overlooked in formal training. Examples of energetic boundaries include noticing when you're leaking energy, noticing when you're overgiving, noticing when you're abandoning yourself, and noticing when your body says no, even if your mouth says yes. Energetic boundaries are about sensation, not logic. They're the early warning signs that your system is nearing depletion. They help you recognize when you're giving from obligation instead of presence, when your body is signaling to you that it's experiencing too much, when you're crossing your own limits to avoid discomfort. These are the boundaries helpers need most right now, and they're the ones we're least trained to recognize. They're the difference between sustainable care and slow burnout. So before we move forward, let's take a quick boundary check-in together. If it feels comfortable for you to do so, place a hand on your chest or on your belly. And let your breath settle. And ask yourself now, where am I giving more than I have? And notice the first thing that comes up, without judgment, without trying to change it, without rationalizing it. Just notice. Now ask yourself, where am I saying yes from fear instead of alignment? Perhaps it's fear of conflict, fear of disappointing someone, fear of being seen as unhelpful. Again, just simply notice whatever comes up. Now ask yourself, where am I abandoning myself to stay regulated for others? This is the most common boundary rupture for helpers. Next, what part of my body feels tight when I think about setting limits? Your body always tells the truth. And lastly, what boundary would bring me relief even if it scares me? Remember that relief is a compass. Let whatever surface be enough for now. If you need some more time with these specific questions, you can always come back later and give some more thought to them. Moving forward from here, let's understand that boundaries are not sentences, they're regulation strategies. And there is a specific formula that we can follow that really helps set boundaries appropriately within our nervous system. So that leads into regulate, clarity, communicate, hold, and repair. And let's take a look at each of those. Starting with regulate. So before you even set a boundary, your body needs to come back into enough steadiness to choose rather than react. A boundary spoken from activation often comes out sharper, smaller, and can even be more confusing than intended. So taking even 30 seconds to breathe, orienting yourself to the room, or feeling your feet can shift you from survival mode into choice. The second stage, clarity. Once your system settles, ask yourself, what is it that I actually need right now? What is sustainable for me long term, not just in this moment? And what aligns with my ethics, my role, and my values? This step prevents boundaries from becoming impulsive or punitive. It roots them in integrity rather than overwhelm. The third step of our formula is communicate. A boundary doesn't need a big speech, it needs clarity. Simple, direct language is often the most compassionate. For example, here's what I can offer. Here's what I can't. Here's what will work for me. This keeps the focus on your capacity, not the other person's behavior. The fourth piece of our formula is holding the boundary, and this is where the real work happens. This isn't about willpower or personality. It's a nervous system skill, the ability to stay regulated while someone adjusts to your limit. Holding often means tolerating discomfort, disappointment, or pushback without abandoning yourself. And lastly, repair. Boundaries wobble. Humans wobble. If you over-explain, over-give, or over-accommodate, it doesn't mean you failed. It means you're learning a new pattern. Repair is simply returning to the boundary with clarity and kindness toward yourself and the relationship. So what we've just walked through is a reminder that boundaries aren't about perfect scripts. They're about the state of your nervous system. When you regulate first, clarify what you need, communicate simply, hold the limit with steadiness, and repair when things wobble, boundaries become less about control and more about care. This formula isn't about getting it right every time. It's about building a way of relating that keeps you connected and intact. And once you understand that boundaries are a nervous system practice, not a personality trait, it becomes easier to see why different situations call for different kinds of limits. Not every boundary needs the same level of firmness. Some moments require gentleness, some require steadiness, and both can be ethical and compassionate. So let's talk about two of the most important tools helpers need in the real world practice: the soft no and the steady no. Most people think that boundaries must be harsh or abrupt or rigid, but they don't. There are two kinds of no that protect your energy while preserving connection. The soft no redirects without rupture. It's gentle, warm, and grounded in care. Examples are, I can't do that, but here's what I can offer you. That's outside my scope, but here's a resource for you. Or I don't have the capacity for that today. Soft no's maintain relationship while still honoring your limits. They're especially useful when you want to stay connected but need to adjust expectations. The steady no is firm, clear, and non-negotiable. It protects your well-being, your time, and your ethical boundaries. Examples of a steady no are, I'm not available outside of scheduled sessions. I can't continue at this pace. That's not something I can take on. Steady no's create safety for you and for the work. They're not cold or harsh. They're consistent and grounded. Both are ethical, both are compassionate, and both are necessary for sustainable helping. Let's take a look at some additional activities that help you really maintain your boundaries when you are struggling throughout the day. And these are some mindfulness practices that come from a pretty amazing card deck that I've had for years. It's the Anti-Burnout Card Deck. And I've talked about this card deck in other podcasts that I've done. And these are, again, really great tools that focus on, being mindful in your practice around caring for yourself, regaining balance, enjoying the work that you do, making sure that we continue that empathetic attunement, having compassion for ourselves and for others, and managing countertransferences and the triggers that lead to that. So we're going to focus on just a few, again, that work really well around boundaries. So this first one is called Balancing Between Clients. This particular card, I believe, falls into the energetic boundary because it's focused on that time that we have in between sessions. So let me read it directly from the card for you. We often forget to care for ourselves between clients, and it can be quite draining to be in a space of absorbing others' experiences without regularly tuning into our own. First, place a hand on your heart and take a moment to recognize just how intense the work of psychotherapy is for the therapist. Then, experiment with phrases that allow you to wish both your clients well and yourself. And here's some of the examples that it gives. And it's similar to a loving kindness meditation. So it says, even as my client suffers, so do I, and I wish us both well. May we both be free from suffering. May we both live with ease. May we both accept ourselves as we are. So a great tool to find that time in between your sessions to be more mindful and rebalance your energy. The next thing that we're going to take a look at is called answering the phone. And this is a discussion I get into with staff that are under my supervision all the time. I love cell phones. I really do. It's so nice having them when you're out and about, but it has changed our society so much that we are expected to be available all the time. And that's not just with us as the helping professions. That's just within our social lives as well. And it is draining to be that way. And so this particular activity focuses around being more mindful about answering the phone. And again, it really ties into some of that energetic as well as that emotional boundary within this. I tell my staff all the time, you don't have to answer the phone. We are not crisis responders. Now, some of you who are listening to this, maybe, and yeah, you got to answer the phone. But for my staff in our positions, we are outpatient and we are not required to answer the phone all the time. We have a regular schedule that we have to keep. But, sometimes, especially when you're working with members that may be more higher needs, they're calling you all the time. That phone is literally ringing off the hook. And when you have a schedule, it's very difficult to answer the phone all the time. But you feel obligated to do that. And even more so because of this difficulty that we're all experiencing right now in keeping to our normal boundaries. And I tell my staff, you have things that you need to do too. You have other members that you need to respond to. Your progress notes, your time, your lunch is just as important as whatever it is that client or that parent is calling you for. Your voicemail specifically says, I will get back to you in 24 hours or the next business day. It gives them other options to call if they are experiencing some sort of mental health crisis or an emergency. They also know that they can leave you a message and they get back to you. So take that time, focus on your boundaries. But getting back to the card, This is specifically about when you're choosing to answer the call. And you can tell that this card deck is a little older because it does talk about not knowing who might be on the line. Well, caller ID makes that a little less intense these days, but sometimes, again, all we see is the phone number flashing and we may not recognize who it is by that phone number. So let's take a look at this one together. Again, answering the phone. Dealing with phone calls can be yet another source of stress. Not knowing who or what might greet you on the other end. Take some time to be more present before answering the phone. When the phone rings, deeply listen to the sound before you make any move to answer the call. Noticing also your body and mind's response to the ring. As you pick up the phone, feel its weight, texture, temperature, and other physical properties. So we're focusing on grounding ourselves. Let yourself be aware of any automatic reaction you may have to the name or number that appears. As the conversation begins, remain aware of both speaking and listening. Hear the sound of your own voice. Listen to the sound of the caller's voice. Monitor any reactions that arise. And if you find yourself getting caught up in them, stay connected with your body or some other anchor. As the call finishes, pause and bring attention back to the body, paying particular attention to any areas of tightness or tension. Breathe into these areas, making space for whatever sensations or emotions are there. Okay. So this is a great activity, again, if you are ever dealing with those stressful kind of phone calls or that phone that is ringing off the hook. All right. The other one that we are going to take a look at from the card deck is calendar compassion. So this focuses on that structural boundary. Okay. Sometimes our planner or schedule can look daunting when viewed as a whole. It can help bring some compassionate awareness to your lineup of clients one at a time. Take a breath. Open your agenda or calendar. Take another breath. Read the name of the first client. Take another breath. Notice the name and the first emotional, physical, and mental reactions. Take another breath. Look at the next client on the calendar. Notice again and name the first emotional, physical, and mental reactions. Take a breath. Repeat this process for the rest of your client list. Offer yourself and your clients any compassion that you may need. Great mindfulness tool when you feel overwhelmed by looking at your schedule throughout the day. And the last one that we'll take a look at is mindful meal breaks. And I'm bringing this one today because I think we're all guilty of this, of not taking that time to actually eat during our day, right? We're either answering the phone, we are doing progress notes, we're catching up on something that we need to do, or we just skip it for something else. I don't know why, and I'm saying this knowing that people I work with may be listening to this, but we have some administrators at our agency that are really bad at scheduling lunchtime meetings. Really bad. And I'm all like, you work in mental health. Why are you scheduling a lunchtime meeting? Because oftentimes what happens is, especially if you have a regular schedule, someone schedules something during your lunch, you now lose out on your lunch. And I don't know about you all, but I'm not sitting on a Teams meeting or phone call eating. That's not going to work for me. Some people don't care. I've seen plenty of people on these lunchtime meetings sitting there and eating. Now, if you have a lunch and learn, that's a whole other situation. You sit there with the idea that we're going to eat together, we're going to take some time together and do some good practice together too. But a meeting during your lunch break? No. So, we have any administrators out there listening to this? Stop scheduling those lunchtime meetings. All right, but back to our card, a mindful meal break. Food nourishes us physically, but we can also allow it to nourish us more deeply than a mere source of physical energy to get through the day. Try some simple mindful eating to nourish all of yourself for the rest of the workday. Set aside your laptop, phone, paperwork, reading material, and any other distractions. Look at your snack or meal and reflect briefly on the natural and human forces that came together in order to produce it and make it available to you. Breathe in and take in the aroma of your food. When you do take that first bite, give your full attention to the experience. Notice the texture, the flavor, and any reactions that might be occurring in your body and mind. Try chewing just a little more slowly than usual, pausing for a breath or two between bites. When you're done, resolve to use the energy this food has given you to stay more awake and present for yourself and your clients during the rest of the day. There are other cards in this deck that also talk about like snack breaks and meal times, kind of the idea of like taking a drinking break where you drink water, coffee, tea, whatever it may be. There's even one about when you go to the bathroom, because, we have so much time to go to the bathroom during the day, and even kind of doing a little mindful presence as you're walking to the waiting room. And again, I love this card deck because it gives so many different resources to helping you be more mindful in your day. And that mindfulness is a huge practice for keeping our boundaries safe and making sure that we are taking care of ourselves during the day. So I will be sure to add the information about this deck in the description of this podcast if you choose to go out and grab it for yourself. So before we close today, I do want to talk about something that's really important still. Boundaries can trigger guilt. And guilt is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're doing something new. Helpers often feel guilty when they begin to stop overfunctioning, stop rescuing, stop absorbing others' emotions, and stop abandoning themselves to keep the peace. This guilt is a nervous system echo. It's the residue of old patterns where self-sacrifice felt safer than self-honoring. It's not a moral indictment. It's your body adjusting to a new way of relating. So when guilt arises, because it will, try saying to yourself, this guilt is a sign I'm choosing myself. Let the guilt be a marker of growth, not a reason to retreat. And remind yourself again, you are worth setting healthy boundaries for. This is how you are going to be able to maintain in this practice. Thank you for being here today. As you move back into your day, remember, boundaries are not walls. They are pathways back to yourself. They protect your energy. They protect your ethics. They protect your capacity to care. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to set limits. You are allowed to choose yourself. Boundaries don't break you. They keep you whole. And remember always, You are not alone. I'll see you next time.